These are the blade guide rollers for that sawmill, the Mite bandsaw mill. When I bought the mill, it was set up for 2-inch blades. The drive wheel bearings were shot in it, and I found that idler sheave, the big wheel that the band blade goes around, was cracked. Well, I called the company, and I had to get a new shaft for the main drive. They recommended changing over the setup to 1.25-inch blades instead of 2-inch blades. So I wound up changing everything out for 1.25-inch blades. I got new sheaves and stuff for it. And they also had come up with this new style of guide rollers. The old ones were pretty big, clumsy, crappy things, and they've got these new ones that are quite a bit nicer. So I got these, and this is what it is. They've got a round roller here with a bearing seated in it, mounted on a shaft, and this shaft mounts in an angle bracket that mounts up on the carriage of the sawmill. You've got one that goes on top and one that goes on bottom, and then there's just a simple bearing that goes on the back that is the thrust bearing for the back of the blade. Now these rollers have 2 bearings in them. There's one here in the front and one in the back, and there's a little space in between them that separates them. Those bearings go out pretty regularly, so I bought a whole bunch of bearings. I change them out pretty regularly. Basically, the shaft on these is a 1/2-inch bolt, and the head of it, the shaft end of it, has been turned down to fit those bearings, and it's eccentric. It's off center just a little bit so that it's eccentric, so you can adjust the space between the bearings, fine-tune adjust them by turning this bolt in the mounting bracket, and the eccentric then of course will cam over and change the position of the roller. So you don't want the blade riding on the guide all the time. You want it just a little separate from the blade. According to the Timberwolf blade company that I've been buying my blades from, if the blade is tensioned properly and sharpened properly and has the proper tooth set on it, it'll go through the log straight on its own without any blade guides. The end of these shafts was drilled for a zerk, and it's got a hole in here for the grease to come out into the bearing, but it doesn't do anything because it doesn't come out into the bearing. These are sealed bearings, and the hole in the shaft just comes out and it greases the shaft. It greases this portion where the bearing race rides on instead of going up and greasing the bearing. And these bearings are sealed bearings, so they don't get grease in them anyway. It's kind of counterproductive actually to grease these, because the grease comes out in here in the race of the bearing, and so the bearing can just spin on this shaft. And that's what's happened with this one. The bearing is spun on that shaft, the roller is spun on that shaft and wore it down. Now this one here is one that I did up a couple years ago, and I just took the zerk out of it and put a bolt in there to hold that roller on there anyway. This bearing is definitely wore out. This one is not too bad, and this one is rolling, but it's kind of crunchy. I took one off. It fell off a couple years ago because the bolt back here, the rear bolt came out, and the thing fell off, and I got it out and put a new bearing in it and stuff and got a new bolt for it, and I never did put it back on and put it away someplace when I started milling with the intent of putting it on, and now I've set it someplace where I can't find it, so I'm going to have to make another one, and I've got to make new shafts anyway. I took these off to clean them up. I figured it was time to clean them up, get the rust off of them and stuff, and since this one is all boogered up anyway, and these aren't too bad, I'll see what they look like when I get the rollers off of them, but it may be time to replace all of them. So that's the project of the day, and it's just as well that the weather has turned off pretty nasty. It's just been pouring down rain for the last few days since I took the slab off of that log out there, and today it's blowing about, it's gusting up to 40, 45 or more, and we actually got snow. It's a wet, sloppy, nasty, sleety snow. We got about 3 inches of it. I just had to plow the driveway out so my wife could get home. We weren't ready for that snow yet. She didn't have her snow tires on her car, but it was a nasty, nasty, slippery, wet, heavy snow. The water was just running out of it when I was plowing it with the skid steer. So anyway, it's a good time to work on these projects, and this is kind of one of the reasons I bought that lathe, is so I could do things like this. So that's what I'll have to do. I'll have to go to town, get some bolts, and I've got some steel, some round stock steel I can put in the lathe, and I can turn up one of these, build me one of those. Well, this is how these are held on there. That one I don't want to come off, it's tight. There it come. Okay, so we got a zert. Before some anal retentive asshat corrects it and says it's a zerk, not a zert, I don't care. You ever heard of colloquialisms? Anyway, that's what holds it on. There's a washer on there, and the zerk holds that on. And there it is. And this shaft is, oh, it's got wear on it there too. Not worn like that other one was, but it does have wear on it, and I can see wear here where that bearing has been spinning. The race has been spinning against that bolt. Okay, I'll get those cleaned up, take some measurements off of them, and see about reproducing one of these rollers. And of course, about the time I get done making a new one, I'll find the old one, but that's okay. And I'll have to go to town and get some bolts to use to make those shafts. Well, I gotta wait till I can go to town and get some bolts to reproduce these. But I do need to make one of these. It's probably just as easy to make one as it is to find the one that I lost here. I know I'll find it, but I'll go ahead and make one anyway. I've measured it, and it's 1.656667, something like that. In diameter, the OD. I found a piece of, I think this is leaded steel, and this is 1 3/4 inches. So I cut off a slug of that to stick in here. I've already faced off the side from my bandsaw cut. I'll go ahead and face off this side too. Then I'll turn that down to that OD, and then we'll work on measuring this up. I looked up the dimension on those bearings, and the OD on the bearing is 30 millimeter. So this diameter here, this larger ID, should be 30 millimeter, and then the width of the bearings is 9 millimeters, so I can make that cut 9 millimeter. And this center hole really doesn't make any difference how big that is. That's just got to fit over the 10 millimeter for the shaft. That's what size the shaft is, or the internal diameter of those bearings are. So that's what size the shaft is going to be, is 10 millimeter. This one is about 3/4 inch, so that's fine. It can be 3/4 inch. That gives enough room in there between those bearings to reach a punch down in there to drive those bearings out of there. Meanwhile, I've got it all set up here to face this. See what I can do about that. Alright, we got both sides of that face now. Got a little bit more of that sticking out than what I need here, just barely, and there's not enough there to part that off once I get it turned down. So I'm going to set this piece out a little bit to give myself a little bit more room on there, and to do that I'm just going to take this tool holder and stick in there, and then push that tight up against that, and then tighten this up. And I take that tool holder out of there. It should still be flat on there, and I go ahead and do all my work. That gives me enough room then to part this piece off once I get it made. I'm going to center drill in there and spot that hole and start drilling it out, and I can drill it out to go 3/4, I guess, since that's the size of that internal hole that I want. I don't know what size that is, and it doesn't matter. So this is a 1/2 inch chuck, a 1/2 inch drill bit. This is the biggest that I've got. I've got some reduced shank drill bits up down in the shop, but I don't have them up here. I've got a number 2 to 3 Morris taper reducer, and then I've got a 37/64 drill bit with a number 2 Morris taper on it. This is a core drill or a tap drill for tapping something. I don't remember what, some project that I had in mind. Well, anyway, I'm going to use that, and that's the biggest drill bit that I've got down here. So I'll drill this out to that. 37/64, it must be for a 5/8 tap. Anyway. So that's as big a hole as I can drill. What I'll have to do now is get the boring bar, bore that the rest of the way out. Whoa, just barely. Okay, that's the end there. I wished I had a stop so I could set on that, but I don't have one, so I'll have to do with what we got here. Okay, so this doesn't have to be precise, it's just a clearance hole, but I need to practice being precise. Let's see what we got here. Overshot it by, jeez, how the hell that happened? 30 thousandths. Well, that was fun. So I need this to be 30 millimeter and it's 20 millimeter. The pocket in this roller for the bearing needs to be about 9 millimeters deep. Went to the computer and did a conversion on that. It says 0.3543 inches deep. I don't really have any good way of measuring that. I'm not very good at this. I wanted to put a stop in there and set a stop for that for the depth, but I don't have a stop for this yet. And some people have some real elegant stops that they've made for these lathes, but I'm just using one of these cant twist clamps put on there. To measure that, how deep that cut was, I set this boring bar so the tip of it was right on the outside edge of that, the face of that plug there that I'm making this roller out of. And then I put electronic calipers on there, set it to 9 millimeter so the tag end of it was sticking out, and I just held it with my fingers down tight on the bedways with the end of it up against the carriage there, and then just moved the carriage till I zeroed it out, and then I stopped it, and that's why I set the cant twist clamp on there on the bedways on the rail for a stop. Well, that's what I've got for a stop on that. It's pretty makeup. There's nothing machinist about it or anything, but it'll work good enough for what I need. And I've got that bored out to, I want it 30 millimeters, and I've got it close to a little over 29 millimeters right now. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, that's just it's not in 9 millimeters, it's just in a little ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start boring that out into the 9 millimeter and come out until I reach what's already there. I got 10 millimeters. It's supposed to have been 9. I may have pushed too hard on that cant twist clamp there. Oh yeah, that's too sloppy, way too sloppy and too deep. Okay, well, we've got to try it again. But I've been trying to duplicate these rollers for the bandsaw blade on my bandsaw mill. I started out by cutting off a piece of 1 3/4 steel stock, cut it off about 3 inches, 4 inches long, faced both sides of it, and then drilled a pilot hole through it and progressively drilled until I got a 37/64 drill bit through there. Now this internal hole here doesn't really make too much difference how big it is. It just has to be big enough to clear the 10 millimeter shaft that goes through that the bearings ride on. But the bigger it is, the better it's going to be to get a drift down in through there, a punch down through there to knock those bearings out when I change them. And then we need a pocket in there. It's a 30 millimeter pocket, just slightly less than 30 millimeters, so we got a nice press fit for these bearings. Well, I started out with this and on one end, and I drilled out the hole. Then I used a boring bar to bore that hole out. And then I started drilling the pocket out. Well, getting the pocket, that needs to be a little more precise. These bearings are 9 millimeters wide. and they're 30 millimeters across this way. So I want this pocket to be about 9 millimeters deep. It doesn't have to be within the 100,000ths or anything like that, but it should be fairly close. I don't want these sticking out proud, and then I don't want it sticking in there too far. So that's what I started doing, and I started by just coming out a little bit at a time to get till I got about 29 millimeters, 28, almost 29 millimeters out, and then I started going in. I needed to set up 9 millimeters depth. I put the boring bar up against the face here and then moved it in 9 millimeters using this and holding it on there. Well, I don't have a carriage lock, so what I used for a carriage lock was one of these can't twist clamps, and I've done that before and it worked out okay, but this time I wound up going in 10 millimeters instead of 9 millimeters. So the combination of all my sloppy work just didn't work out. Probably would have worked out for a lot of stuff that I've done, but it's not going to work for this. So I'm going to need to rethink all of this. I'm going to have to do something a little different on here for setting my stop on here.